All right, man, peace. So as we all know by now, the Houston Texans owner, Bob McNair, made some statements at the meeting that was held between the NFL owners and the NFL woke meatheads. He made a certain inflammatory comment that right now is blowing up in his face. He showed a serious lack of decorum, particularly due to the circumstances of that meeting. And right now they're playing cleanup. So they're going to talk about it. And of course, I'm going to chime in.
Now, thanks to one owner, one team had a prison break, so to speak.
Womp womp.
2 days before their game at Seattle, some Texas players walked out in response to owner Bob McNair saying, quote, "We can't have the inmates running the prison."
Look, let me say this quickly. Right now, they're going to use this statement on social media to try to galvanize the woke internet movement amongst internet revolutionary blacks, liberal blacks, etc. They're desperate to try to put a battery in the back of the liberal black socialist movements. Why? Because they're floundering right now. They're plotting their plans with Kaepernick and Michael Bennett. They're starting to lose a lot of steam because those guys are inept. They're not built to be leaders. I mean, let's be for real. Is Bob McNair a so-called racist? Most likely. But as I've stated numerous times in the past, brothers, I don't give a shit about what most of these people have to say or what they think. My world does not revolve around what a so-called Caucasian thinks about me or what they have to say. So I don't get shattered by these type of statements, whether he meant it to be racist or not. I don't care. If you're an NFL player and you play for the Houston Texans, your job is to do your job as well as you can so that you can be compensated handsomely for it. And then if need be, if you're a free agent, you can leave and go to another plantation, because all these places are plantations. If you're an employee, you just happen to be recompensed for your duties. It is what it is. Either you can deal with it or not. Once again, this whole thing is not even about race relations in America. It's about a bunch of spoiled, rich black athletes who've had a battery put in their back by social media. And they've had a big bucket of cold water thrown in their face because they thought that they were different and that they were special. And they're finding out that they're not. They're finding out that just because you get offered commercials and endorsements, it doesn't mean that affluent billionaire Caucasian men are going to view you any differently. And quite frankly, nor should they. Why should they look at you as a peer when you have not shown that you think on a ruling class level? So no, they don't take you seriously. No, they're not going to take your complaints and your whining seriously, nor should they. They are businessmen. Their job is to stay concerned with the bottom line. When the so-called black man has that mentality, then we'll be on our way to true affluence and prestige and rulership. Everything that the so-called black man claims that he's ready for and that he wants. Little silly shit like this does not move me in the least. He said we can't have the inmates running the prison. He bungled it. He's an old man. Maybe he meant asylum. Maybe he really meant prison. Maybe he looks at all his players as just a bunch of dancing monkeys. Who gives a fuck? As long as they're getting paid, move on. There are a lot of people all across America in corporate jobs whose bosses don't like them and who don't like their bosses. There are a lot of people working all across corporate America whose bosses have the same mentality. I'm not going to let the inmate run the asylum. Once again, if you don't like it, stop trying to change their thoughts. Start your own business. That's basically how it works. But the so-called black man does not want to do that. When I say the so-called black man, I mean the liberal black man with a slave mentality. I'm not talking about all brothers. I'm talking about the liberal black man with the slave mentality. He doesn't want to do that because he doesn't believe that he's fully functioning, that he's fully living until he can get validation from the Caucasian man. That's what all this shit is really about, is getting that damn hug.
During last week's owners meeting about ongoing player demonstrations during the national anthem. About 10 players, including star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, left the facility Friday, a source told Sarah Barshop.
So about 10 players threw a tantrum and walked out and got upset just so that they can come back again.
Now, while Texans coach Bill O'Brien said Hopkins was taking a personal day, sources told Adam Schefter, whom you'll hear from in a moment, that Hopkins' absence was directly related to McNair's comment. Most of the players who left returned to the facility, the source said, and the remaining players were talked out of their protest by the coaching staff. Now,
this shit reminds me of that episode of The Fresh Prince when Will Smith said, "How come he don't love me, Uncle Phil?"
Now, McNair, who according to the report in ESPN magazine, apologized to league executive and former player Troy Vincent personally at the meeting, said today in a statement, quote, "I regret that I used that expression. I never meant to offend anyone, and I was not referring to our players. I used a figure of speech that was never intended to be taken literally."
Now, when Bob McNair makes this, this apology, this mea culpa, do I believe that he's being sincere? I really don't think that it matters whether he's being sincere about this apology or not. If you were to ask me what I really feel, I really don't think that he meant to be overtly racist. It could be that his mind frame is so deeply embedded that he made a statement and didn't realize that it would be found offensive. There are many different levels of racism. Right? There are quote unquote racist statements that are made to purposefully quote unquote hurt somebody who they know can be hurt by those sentiments. And then there's just people who are just speaking their free mind and who that's just the wavelength that their brain works at, and they don't realize that other people will be hurt by that sentiment. And then there's just people who are in a position of authority, bosses per se, and that's how they view their workers. Either way, if you're super sensitive like that, you're not built to be a leader. That's why I say these guys going down to meet with these owners and acting like they're going to negotiate. How can you do that when a lot of these guys are not even running their own house properly? A lot of them are going home and getting bossed around by their baby mama, but they're going to a meeting thinking that they're going to dictate terms to a 75-year-old self-made billionaire. Really? Good luck with that. You can't even tell your woman shit, but you're going to tell this guy something?
I would never characterize our players or our league that way, and I apologize to anyone who was offended by it.
I'm really here, Aaron, to talk about Seattle. I'm 100% with these players. Our coaching staff's 100% behind these players.
Well, you don't have a choice but to say that because, your future is directly connected to, how these players are feeling, because how they feel is going to determine how well they play. So, of course, you got to side with the quote unquote players. You better say that. You probably just got off the phone with McNair, and McNair said, "Look, I need you to get in front of that microphone and put on a show like you are with our players. What I said will blow over. Don't worry about it. But we need you to make sure that they're ready to play on Sunday."
And if you have Seattle questions, that's what I'm here to talk about, with all due respect.
Is his absence related to the comments?
No, just I'm not going to, again, I'm really just focused on the game. You guys have any Seattle? There's a couple guys had personal days today. We've had a long week.
You mean pissed off days today? That's what they had. They had a pissed off day. They didn't have a personal day. Pronounce it right.
Long week, coming off the bye, so we practiced on Monday, and we had an extra practice, so a couple guys needed to take care of some things.
A lot of players, including myself, we put our bodies and minds on the line every time we step on that field.
Yes, and what you are is an asset. You put your body and mind on the line and you get handsomely compensated for it. Sorry, but you're not going to get a gold medal like you were in Iraq for clanging your head up against another man's head on a football field. That's what's called being a meathead. You get recompensed handsomely for being a meathead. You're not a hero. Sorry. These dudes sound like they're about to cry because of what Bob McNair said.
And to use an analogy of inmates in a prison, I said it disrespectful.
When you read the comments, did it seem to fly in the face of who you thought he was and the way that he's behaved, or did it confirm maybe some feelings or suspicions that you had?
I haven't seen anything quite like that, but I can't say I'm surprised.
Hey, brother, open up a history book. You'll see a lot worse. If the worst thing that somebody could say to you and you're an employee of theirs is that they're not going to let the inmates run the prison after you have staged a protest that has hurt the league's bottom line, you live in a pretty charmed life if you're taking home a 7-figure check every year. I'm sorry, but no. I'm not playing any violins for the NFL players.
I'm sure there's a lot of owners that feel that way.
Did you guys consider walking out, or did you guys have to be talked into practicing today? Were you guys considering some action?
Yeah, I mean, when it happened, there's 1,000 emotions going through your mind. And
all that tells me is that you guys were woefully unaware that's how he has always thought. Why would you think that a 75, 80-year-old Caucasian billionaire would think something other than that about you because he shook your hand on draft day? Like, give me a break.
Obviously, one emotion is just to leave the building completely. But we decided to go to work. You know, the situation is not over.
Hey, millions of people across America go to work every day to jobs where they don't like their boss and their boss doesn't like them. Where they don't like their job and they're ready to leave every day. So, get over it.
It's something that we'll reconvene and talk about again.
All right, the NFL Players Association's Executive Director DeMaurice Smith has released the following statement. Our men are working Americans like anyone else. No one has the right to define them as anything less than a person. That is what this has always been about, close quote. Adam Schefter, we just heard Bill O'Brien.
That's what it's always been about. I thought that supposedly it's been about trying to achieve racial equality. Isn't that what your Christ figure Kaepernick has been saying, allegedly?
Try to shift the focus to the game. But how bad is this inside the Texans facility and, for that matter, across the league?
Michael, we've never seen anything like this. I would venture to say that right now the league is on fire. That may be over-dramatizing it. I don't...
Yes, it is over-dramatizing it, but I expect that from ESPN. You guys love this news cycle. You've been pushing this super liberal rebellion for the longest time, or for over a year. And you guys are going to reap what you sow. Because ESPN has a multi-billion-dollar deal with the NFL, so it's interesting that they're the ones pushing this narrative harder than anybody else.
I don't think so. I don't think we've ever seen a scene where players were leaving the facility en masse and had to be brought back in because they were so enraged over the comments that an owner made at a time when everything was already incredibly sensitive and delicate. This is almost unprecedented. In fact, it is unprecedented.
And this is really, once again, all due to Donald Trump and his rather masterful stratagem of, basically scaring all the rabbits out of their warrens, out of their tunnels. What Donald Trump basically did is he inflamed the players so much that he's created this very caustic environment in the NFL. And he's putting the NFL owners in a position where they have to resolve this issue immediately or risk losing this multi-billion-dollar business venture.
And we've got a situation where we've gone through a season where there have been tipping points where this situation has gotten inflamed after President Trump's comments in Alabama, after Vice President Pence walked out of the Colts game, after Jerry Jones said he was going to require the players to stand for the anthem. This may be as explosive as any of those because those players in that organization are upset, and players across the league are upset.
Oh.
And the scab that had been developed has now been picked off. And now we're going to wait and see what the fallout of all this is.
All the fallout's going to be is they're going to get their asses right back on the field and they're going to play. All these guys have families to provide for. They have multiple family members to provide for. And they could throw their little tantrum all they want. All they're going to do is get down on another knee. Maybe get down on two knees. They should start wearing knee pads before the game. Because that's all their ass is going to do.
It's not just going to go away. Now, again, the Texans players came back to the facility. They are scheduled to leave Saturday for Seattle. And there are Seahawks players also upset. What's going to happen here? We're going to find out. But again, this is the latest incident that has inflamed an already sensitive and delicate situation.
Oh, well, this is a perfect setup for this Sunday's game between the Houston Texans and the Seattle Seahawks. Now we can get a big woke fest. Everybody before the game can hold hands, get down on both their knees. Hell, maybe get down on their stomachs. You can have Michael Bennett grab the microphone and yell out, "My kids, my kids. I just want to see my kids." Richard Sherman, he can grab the microphone and talk a bunch of shit. Richard Sherman is another one of these guys who everybody claims is so smart. I've never heard that man say one thing that was profound at all. It's pretty much, okay, he went to Stanford, so he must be smart. So let's attribute all types of intelligence to him that he really has not conveyed, other than being a loudmouth. Nothing against him. I'm not saying he's dumb per se, but I haven't heard anything from him to denote that he's erudite on any subject in regards to how much credit he gets from the liberal sports media.
Michael.
All right, Adam Schefter with the latest. Get back to the phone, man. It sounds like this story is just beginning. Now, players across the league took to social media to express their disappointment.
Yes, speaking of Richard.
With Bob McNair's remark. or rather leagues, I should say, because first, Draymond Green ripped.
Let's see. Richard Sherman said, I can appreciate people being candid. Don't apologize. You meant what you said. Showing true colors allows people to see you for who you are. That's right, Richard. And many people see you for who you are as well, which is an intellectual poser. Okay? No disrespect, bro. That's what you are. You're another guy trying to act militant, but you just militantly want that hug. And the second tweet proves it. I wish more people would do that so the world could ostracize those who don't want to see equality. That is another neoliberal fascist sentiment. We're going to ostracize everybody who doesn't want to see quote unquote equality, meaning everything goes, anything goes, except for what we don't like, because that's how the super liberals are. What does that even mean? Why would you ostracize somebody who doesn't want what you want? Doesn't that make you exactly what you claim them to be? He says, otherwise they will continue to hide. Actually, they're not going to continue to hide, Richard. They're going to continue to rule. That's what people who rule do. They have preferential treatment for those that are with them. When the so-called black man learns to understand that and stop trying to put everybody else over his own, then our people will be on their way. You don't get that because the only feeling of togetherness that you have is on a football team.
Ripped McNair on Instagram, and then he expanded on those thoughts at Warrior Shoot-Around. There's Marshall Newhouse bringing some levity to it, but here's Draymond Green from Warrior Shoot-Around.
I would personally want to play for someone who viewed me as an inmate.
Well, then you better retire because Joe Lacob views you the same way. You're an employee.
I haven't done nothing in my life to be an inmate.
Well, let me say, hey, and brother, this is why I've always said from the start that we're behind enemy lines and that this is prison. What do I mean when I say that this is prison? This is not the place that was created for the so-called black man to thrive. Okay? And that might be traumatic. I know a lot of pro-black dudes, that's just a cop out. We got to keep them. Look, I'm dealing with reality. Okay? When you understand this system and all of its sub-levels and how it was set up and what it was set up to do, this was not set up to be for the black man, so-called black man. Just you calling yourself a black man is a sign that you're an inmate, because our people don't know where they're from. They don't know their origin. They don't know their lineage. They don't know their culture. They don't know their language. They don't know any of that. So the people who are in rulership can tell you anything. When you go to take these DNA tests, they can tell you whatever. That's why they have stories about people going to 3 and 4 different DNA banks and getting 3 or 4 different results, because they could tell you whatever. Okay? That's what it is to be in prison. You get told what your history is. You don't know. This is why everybody's incredulous when certain truths about history come out. They just can't, they can't fathom certain things. But Draymond Green doesn't understand where he's at. He's another spoiled athlete who is running his mouth because he feels like he has the right to, and because he has the right to, and because he has a certain level of fame and notoriety, he takes what he himself says way too seriously.
Some people comment on my post saying it's a figure of speech. I mean, agree or disagree, figure of speeches aren't okay in 2017. If I come out and give a figure of speech on anything, whether that's race, whether that's sexual orientation, whatever that is, if I come out and give a figure of speech in 2017, I'm going to get ridiculed by any group that's formed to protect one's group. I'm going to be fined by the NBA. I'm going to be looked at ridiculously by the community. So why is that okay?
You already answered your own question, bro. That means that you're property. When you're a member of a league and they can fine you for what you say, that means that you don't have free speech, bro. That means that you're property. Isn't that funny? They could fine players, and I mentioned this already, for these people who always talk about how, you can't stop them from protesting because it's their, they have the right to free speech. Okay, well then, you know what? Next time that you're at work and you're in a conference room and you're about to have a big meeting, stand on the conference room table and say, I hate faggots, and watch what happens to you. And remember, you have free speech. So when they call you in that office and fire your ass, that's what you should tell them. Okay? Same thing with Draymond. The reason why you're held to a certain standard is because you're only at a certain level. Now, Bob McNair, all he has to do is apologize. You know why? Because he's not really answerable to anybody else. He's not. Right? Not to that degree. He's not answerable to anybody else. He has not infracted in a way that is going to hurt the bottom line. And that's why I said when that whole issue happened with Donald Sterling, when he had the team taken away from him, that was not real. That was a ritual. Okay? Because he easily could have said, I have the right to free speech and I was entrapped. And you don't have the right to take this team away from me. He agreed to sell the team. They could act like they mandated it or all that. All that stuff is bullshit. Okay? When you reach that level, they do what they want. So our people are looking for quote unquote equality based on no matter what class you are. And that's also part of the communist, the communist belief system. Get rid of the middle class and just make everybody either a proletariat or, somebody who's in charge of all the proletariats, all the workers.
All right, Seth Wickersham is here with me now. He, along with Don Van Natter Jr., authored this piece in ESPN, the magazine. Seth, first up, did you realize that Bob McNair's quote would become this big of a deal?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
And, I knew that it would get some attention. Spoke to the Texans a couple days ago, and said, look, this is what my reporting shows. And, to McNair's credit, he never tried to deny it. And I think he felt horrible. And, he had told me that he went and apologized to Troy Vincent.
Yeah.
And, felt like that it wasn't to be taken literally. I knew that it would get some attention, but I had no idea that Draymond Green said what he said.
Well, I'm not surprised. Draymond is woke, and he's playing in Oakland. That's Wokeville. That whole West Coast area, all them motherfuckers out there is woke, man. So
it
resonated.
It was coming, yeah.
Yeah, I knew this was too good to be true. All the kumbaya they were singing after these meetings,
There wasn't any kumbaya. All that was players who were posturing for the camera, Malcolm Jenkins and all those other clowns, because they had been holding up their fists for so long, and they finally got to see the Wizard of Oz. And they realized all that shit was smoke and mirrors. Nothing was going to get resolved, so they had to make a good show of it with the sports media. None of those guys are mentally equipped to actually attain any of the so-called goals that they were in pursuit of, because they don't have the foggiest idea how to get there, because they don't understand that this is a commercial society. This is not an emotional society. This is not the place for emotional people to think that they're going to get what they want just because they feel that's what they deserve. That's not how society works. You get what you want because you take it. That's basically that. Like this idiot Jamel Hill talking about we're a country of dissenters. The colonists dissented. No, the colonists waged war. Okay, that's what they did. They didn't protest. They waged war.
because these owners aren't so sincere, and I'm going to say it in the collective, these owners aren't so sincere that they're willing to move through this process with the priority being principle and not profit. This is a business meeting. And this is not something that just can simply be negotiated.
Simple as that. I mean, hello.
And the thing that really, you know, I can't decide, and I've met Mr. McNair. I know Mr. McNair. You know Mr. McNair. Very pleasant guy, has done a lot of fine things in the community. The thing that I just can't decide is whether or not I wouldn't prefer that it was an unfortunate pun, that it was intentional, as opposed to perhaps a Freudian slip, because it really gives you, as many have pointed out,
well, that's what I alluded to early on. It could be just a slip of his subconscious mind. And even if it was, look, you have to already assume that. The fact that a lot of these players get so emotionally bent out of shape when these type of things are revealed really only shows you how ignorantly they were raised. They were never taught anything real. And now they're getting confronted with reality, and it's mentally damaging, it's traumatizing to them.
Insight into the thinking of a lot of these owners. I mean, how tone deaf can you be at a meeting that originated with protests about police brutality and criminal justice reform to say we can't have the inmates running the prison?
Because they're running a business. They have nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick's so-called protest. That's why they moved him out. So I don't understand why people like Michael Smith cannot understand that. Now, in regards to Bob McNair, he did show a lack of decorum to utter that in front of everybody else. But no, it is not incumbent upon the owners to sympathize with the players and their alleged cause. When the so-called black man learns that it's not incumbent on any other demographic or race to sympathize with our people's plight, that the solution is going to come from us so that we don't have to give credit to anybody else when it finally comes to fruition, then our people going to be on their way. I don't know how many times I got to keep saying that, man. And as a man, why would you want to give the next man credit, man? It's like the movie Troy, when Achilles was fighting Hector. Remember Brad Pitt was Achilles, and he had that fight scene with Hector, and Hector tripped over the stone. He said, "Stand up, Prince, stand up. I'm not going to let a stone take my glory." Why would you want to give the next man credit for your salvation? That shit don't make no sense, man.
Of all things. And so all I want people to do is, when our instinct is to, understand that this was an unfortunate slip of the tongue, anytime anybody, a player, college or pro, Seth, suggests or likens playing football or professional sports to slavery in any way whatsoever, or say the...
Now, not to digress, but you see that player right there. Of course, Michael Jenkins in the middle. But to the left is a player named McLeod Jr. McLeod is a Scottish name, which, and this is a whole nother topic for another day, but the McLeods of Scotland, as well as the original Scottish, were black. Okay? But that's, like I said, that's a whole other topic for another day. But that's why you will notice that numerous blacks here in the Americas have Scottish last names, particularly in North America and the Caribbean, because this is where many of the original black Scots were deported to or fled to. But I'll deal with that in another video.
Say the plantation, people ripped them to shreds, to Draymond Green's point. And you have an owner likening it to, even if he meant inmates running the asylum, which certainly wouldn't be as bad, that is a figure of speech, saying we can't have the inmates running the prison. It goes to show they're not partners and they're not equals in this.
Hello? It took you that long to figure that shit out?
No. And, I think that this is going to undo a lot of work that was done. Mm-hmm. And I think...
What work? What work that was done, dude? You mean in that 2-hour meeting that went nowhere? That's the only work that's been done.
I think that, look, this was a big comprehensive story. And there were things that Jerry Jones said in the story. There were things that Dan Snyder said. There were things that Terry Pagula said that were tone deaf as well.
Yep.
And nobody's talking about any of those things, right, because this McNair thing has completely taken over. Well,
it's not that it was tone deaf, it's that they're totally focused on their bottom line. I just don't get it. I don't understand. Well, I shouldn't say I don't get it. I know why they're doing it. It's because this is how they've been trained from their youth upward to look at the white man as a God figure and a savior. So really right now they're at their wits' end in trying to convince these affluent Caucasians to convert their thought process. These are men who are 50, 60, 70 years old. Their thought process has gotten them to the point where they are shot callers. They're not going to convert themselves over to your emotional mindset, or they'll end up like you, being a servant.
Let me ask you about the owners real quick, because Jerry Jones got the hardline stance. Daniel Snyder has got the opposite of hard evidence by saying 96% of people want them to stand. And then you have Jed York, who's way more enlightened when it comes to these issues, having dealt with it, from the start with Colin Kaepernick.
Well, no, it's not that Jed York is more enlightened. It's that Jed York understands his environment. He understands that he's smack dab on X marks the spot in Wokeville, that being San Francisco. So he knows that he has to toe the line.
If they can't bridge the gap among one another, how are they ever going to find common ground if that exists with the players?
What's the solution? What does a solution look like? What the player...
Thank you, sir. Please, I want to see if Michael Smith answers this one.
Players...
None that makes everybody happy.
Well, what the players are protesting are things that are well beyond the control of anybody in the NFL to fix them. Now
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Finally, somebody who's speaking some type of truth here.
Now, they can do a lot of things to do that, and I think there's a sincere effort to try to do that. In the players and owners meeting that Roger Goodell presided over, the players felt like that Roger took their side and had more empathy with their situation than a lot of league executives and a lot of owners.
No, sir, that was Roger Goodell trying to play good cop. That's what he was doing, and very, very shrewdly playing good cop. We all know that Roger Goodell works in the best interest of the owners. His role is to play good cop, let the owners play bad cop, and hopefully that can change the perception of Roger Goodell in the future. Remember, they are going to have to negotiate another CBA, and if they feel like Roger Goodell is a sympathetic figure towards their cause, or causes, plural, they may not give him as hard of a time, or they may assist him in changing his public perception. That's all that's about.
It was a really surprising development.
Right.
I mean, he was going around the table telling the owners, "You're really not listening to what they're saying." It was a fascinating meeting, and then the meeting the next day that was the owners only meeting where Jerry talked, where McNair talked. That's where a lot of true colors came out.
Right, that's why I think Russell Okung is correct in that. Are they really serious about sacrificing when it comes to their business partners, their advertisers, their sponsors, the goodwill that it would take to really get on the side of the players?
Why would they be willing to do that for?
For whom the prison system, first of all, the prison system is an extension of slavery and indentured servitude, right? And for
The prison system is really an extension of the commercial aspect of America. Once again, when you enter the prison system, you're just a stock option. That's it. That's it.
For a lot of these guys, this is personal because you know what an inmate is to DeAndre Hopkins who walked out? You know what an inmate is? An inmate is the woman that's serving 20 years in prison for pouring boiling chemicals on his mother. Okay? His mother is blind in her right eye and has 60% vision in her left eye. He was 10 years old when that happened. So when you refer to these players as inmates, given what they put on the line, that's not something they could just say, oh, that was a mistake, let's move forward here. It's going to have, to Adam's point, lasting ramifications. So,
well, look, we all know that the ramifications are not going to last that long because at the end of the day, DeAndre Hopkins is gainfully employed by the Texans. And in order for him to remain gainfully employed, he's going to have to perform at a high level. So he is going to have to get over it. You can act like there's some power behind DeAndre Hopkins that he can exert, and it's really not unless he's willing to quit. If he's ready to leave and leave his cleats on the field and never come back to the NFL, then that would show me something. But most likely he's not going to do that. It's a very unfortunate thing that happened to his mother. But when Bob McNair said what he said, that really was a subconscious faux pas, slip of the tongue. Revealing to the so-called black man that yes, this place is not for you. This is a prison for the so-called black man. Period.
So you know what I expect? Talk about a solution. It may not be a solution. I expect in the offseason for there to be a change to the owner's manual or the operations manual. Excuse me. I know that's what the NFL Players Association is bracing for. So well done out of you as usual, Seth. We appreciate the time, man. Thank you. All righty.
Of course, there's going to be a change to the manual. Why wouldn't there be? There was supposed to have been a change last year. But the fact that they didn't change the manual in regards to players protesting the national anthem really just showed in how low a regard they had for the players' intellectual abilities and also how faithful and loyal they would be to the so-called protest. They looked at the players as children, really as they should for the most part, because the players have not shown that they're on a much higher level than children. But they are going to make a change to that rule book. There's no doubt about that. But anyway, we'll see what transpires this week in the new round of quote unquote meetings, and if their God figure, Colin Kaepernick, will attend. But anyway, peace.